In June 1965, 6 teenage boys from a Catholic boarding school in Tonga decided to do something reckless. Bored with school discipline, they borrowed a small fishing boat and set sail for Fiji, roughly 500 miles away. None of them had any real sailing experience. What happened next would become one of the strangest survival stories ever recorded. The boys, Sione, Stephen, Kolo, David, Luke, and Mano, aged between 13 and 16, hadn't planned this trip carefully. They packed almost no food. Within the first night at sea, a violent storm struck. The sail was torn apart, the rudder broke. For 8 days, they drifted completely at the mercy of the Pacific Ocean. They survived those 8 days on nothing but rainwater and whatever fish they could catch with their bare hands. On the 9th day, they spotted land. A small, uninhabited volcanic island called Ata, abandoned decades earlier after a brutal history of slave raids that had emptied it of people entirely. This is the part of the story most people have never heard, because it directly contradicts one of the most famous novels ever written. William Golding's Lord of the Flies imagines boys stranded on an island descending into savagery, violence, and tribal warfare. What actually happened on Ata was the complete opposite. The boys immediately organized themselves. They split into teams, a garden crew, a cooking crew, a watch crew to keep a signal fire burning at all times. When 2 boys argued, the group enforced a mandatory cooling-off period. They were separated until they could speak calmly again. No one was allowed to stay angry. Psychologists studying group dynamics under extreme stress point to something called pro-social bonding, the tendency of humans in genuine crisis to cooperate rather than compete. Contrary to popular fiction, real survival groups tend to organize around mutual aid, not violence. Shared danger, it turns out, brings people together far more often than it tears them apart. The boys found the remains of an old village abandoned generations earlier. Wild chickens descended from domesticated stock, feral taro plants still growing, banana trees gone wild. They used these remnants of a vanished civilization to build a new, functioning one of their own, entirely from scratch. They built a badminton court. They created a small gymnasium using hollowed logs and vines for weights. They took turns cooking and cleaning. One boy, Stephen, kept the group's spirits up by playing a guitar he had built himself from driftwood and wire, salvaged and shaped with nothing but patience and improvised tools. When one of the boys, Sione, fell from a cliff and broke his leg, something remarkable happened. The others didn't panic or abandon him. They cared for him for weeks, setting the bone as best they could and taking over his responsibilities without complaint. By the time rescue came, the leg had healed cleanly. This detail is significant to researchers who later studied the case. Under extreme stress, group cohesion typically depends on whether individuals believe their contribution matters. By giving every boy a defined role, cook, gardener, firekeeper, lookout, the group unintentionally built a structure that kept everyone psychologically anchored. 15 months passed. The boys maintained their signal fire without fail every single night, in case a ship ever passed close enough to see it. They had no way of knowing whether anyone was even searching for them. Back in Tonga, in fact, the boys had already been presumed dead. Funerals had been held in their honor. In September 1966, an Australian sea captain named Peter Warner was sailing near Ata when he noticed something odd through his binoculars. Burnt patches on the cliffside grass that looked deliberately maintained. Then he saw a boy swimming toward his boat, shouting in broken English that there were 5 more like him on the island. Warner was skeptical at first. The island had been uninhabited for a century. But when his crew brought the boys aboard, they found 6 lean, healthy, remarkably fit teenagers who had built a working society from nothing. Warner radioed Tonga to confirm their identities. The boys who had been mourned as dead were, astonishingly, all still alive. When they returned home, the boys were initially arrested, not for surviving, but for stealing the boat they'd used to leave in the first place. Peter Warner personally paid for a replacement boat to secure their release. He would go on to make a documentary about their survival and remain close with them for the rest of his life. What the Tongan castaways proved, decades before psychologists studied it formally, is that the darkest fictional predictions about human nature under pressure are often wrong. Given structure, purpose, and shared responsibility, people tend to build each other up, not tear each other down. 6 boys went missing for 15 months. 6 boys came home. That's last chance survival.